Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what really happens after the builders have packed up their tools and gone home. We're diving into a critical and, honestly, an often overlooked part of any project: mastering defect management.
So, let me just ask you this. When is a construction project actually finished? Is it the moment the last brick is laid, or maybe when the keys are handed over to the new owner? You might be surprised to hear that the real answer, well, it's not quite that simple.
See, the job isn't truly done at a milestone called practical completion. In fact, that moment kicks off a whole new phase, this hidden chapter in the project's story. And this chapter has a name: the defects liability period.
Okay, so Section 1, Construction's Hidden Chapter. This is the period where the final, nitty-gritty quality of the project gets locked in for good. It's not about big changes, it's all about refinement and making sure everything is exactly as it should be.
And this is exactly where defect management comes into play. You can think of it as the official system for finding, tracking, and fixing any little issues that crop up after the main work is done. It's basically the project's last and most important quality control check.
Now, if we're going to get this right, we have to get the language right. And honestly, one of the biggest points of confusion out there is the difference between a defect and something called a non-conformance. They sound kind of the same, I know, but trust me, the timing is everything.
All right, first up, non-conformance. The key word here is during. This is an issue you spot while the project is still underway. Maybe the wrong type of insulation was delivered, or a foundation was poured an inch off the plans. It's a slip-up during the process, and you deal with it right then and there.
A defect, on the other hand, is something you find after all that main work is finished. This is an issue with the final product. So think a door that sticks, a tap that drips, or a paint job that's already peeling. It's a flaw you find in the thing that's supposed to be complete.
So let's just lay it all out, side by side. A non-conformance happens during the build. A defect is found after the build is complete. One is managed with a non-conformance report, the other with a defect register. It's a really simple difference, but getting it right is absolutely crucial for a smooth project handover.
So, now that we know what a defect is, how do we actually deal with them? How do you make sure nothing slips through the cracks? Well, it all comes down to a really clear 5-step process. Let's get into it.
The process is actually pretty straightforward. First, you have identification. That's just spotting the problem. Then recording. You've got to document everything. Next up, you assign the task and get it fixed. After that, verification. You double-check the work. And finally, closeout. You officially sign off on the fix. Simple as that.
Now, the real heart of this whole thing is the defect register. And look, we're not just talking about a simple to-do list here. To make it work, it has to be detailed. You need a clear description, the exact location, the date, who's responsible for the fix, and, this is the big one, photos. Good data is what prevents arguments and keeps things moving.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the how. But that leaves the most important question of all, right? Why? Why do we go through all this trouble? Why is having a formal process so incredibly important?
It really boils down to 4 main things. First, it makes sure the client gets the quality they paid for. Simple as that. Second, it builds trust and keeps them happy, which is everything for your reputation. Third, it gives everyone a clear, fair process for getting things fixed. And finally, it proves you're meeting your contractual obligations. At the end of the day, it's just about being professional.
And that right there, that's the ultimate goal. Without a good defect management process, a handover is just paperwork. But with it, that handover becomes a powerful symbol that the project is truly 100% complete. It's the final stamp of quality. All right, Section 5, the final handover. So as we start to wrap this up, let's just pull all these threads together. We've walked through that hidden chapter, we've cleared up some key terms, and we've laid out the exact steps that lead to a successful finish.
And if you take one thing away from this today, let it be this. Defect management is not about pointing fingers or finding fault. It's not a negative thing. It's actually a positive, collaborative process. It's about everyone working together to fulfill the original promise of the project, delivering outstanding quality.
So I'll leave you with one last thing to think about. We've talked all about the process for fixing defects, but what's the real cost in money, in reputation, in trust of a defect that never gets fixed at all? Something to chew on.